Hey, everybody, I'm Candid. Frankie's Aaron William Freeland, and we're here to talk everything Maple Leaf, and that is the red Maple Leaf. We'll include the blue one in here, too, but, it isn't our only focus. So if you're watching for the first time, this is the program that talks about Canadian sports, Canadian athletes, all in the Canadian context. Now, that can also equal the Toronto Blue Jays because we consider them a Canadian team because they play out of Toronto. While the players aren't all Canadian, or in fact, I don't think any of them are this year, unless they've brought one in. They haven't had one for the last year or two. So here we are. We find ourselves starting with the blue Maple Leaf, and they took it on the chin against the Senators, Aaron.
Yeah, it was a rather unfortunate game. They had their show run for the full 3 periods. It didn't start well either. Unfortunately, William Nylander had a bit of a beer league warm-up and clonked Anthony Stolarz in the throat. It was actually sent to hospital for precautionary reasons, which means that Joseph Woll had to go back into action. He played Friday night facing 36 shots and a 4-3 overtime loss to Carolina, and then was pressed right back into service where, he ended up on the wrong end again. I believe the Leafs had 14 shots to the Ottawa Senators 44, which is rather lopsided any way you look at it. But the good news is they had Saturday and they have tonight off. They're not going to be playing again until Tuesday against Boston. The Senators are playing the New York Rangers tonight on Prime. That should give them another couple of points in the standings and get them a little bit closer to the final wild card spot.
And I might add that Nylander shot to the throat isn't the first time he's hit a goaltender up high. I think he did it a few years ago, didn't he?
That's my recollection. Yeah, he did it to Matt Murray, and he also did it to Garrett Sparks while back.
Further back, and that's going further back. Yeah, so he has a history of, usually, goaltenders don't want shots above their knees, right? Because all they want to do is get a feel for the puck, right? They're not looking for challenging shots. They're looking to get warmed up, not laid out. They want to get warmed up and not laid out, and that. I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny. And to get hit in the throat, that's very dangerous stuff. So there you go. You can tell us about, will he be coming back soon, Aaron?
The hope is yes. Diagnostic imaging didn't show anything really of consequence. He was on the team charter that same night coming back to Toronto. But yeah, it was basically just precautionary reasons, but better safe than sorry. I mean, Nylander's got a bit of a hummer of a shot. So, it's one of those things where you need to be careful.
We keep hearing things coming out of the mouth of the coach of the Maple Leafs. I don't know. Since the beginning of this year, the team has not played well. I felt in October they should have gotten rid of him. And the reason that you might remember the conversations when I was talking about the too many men on the ice situation. Remember, it happened 3 or 4 times in a span of, I think, of a few games or a week anyway, back to back to back to back. And they kept doing it. And that's a coaching problem for me. That's a coaching issue. If the players don't know when to get on the ice, I mean, and lately he's been getting more and more underhanded with his criticism, while in some eyes it looks justified, but in my eyes it looks like a guy who's losing it. Like now he's picking on a rookie. Aaron, tell us about that.
So after saying that Joseph Woll needed to do better after the Leafs allowed 78 shot attempts and their loss to the Hurricanes on Friday, Easton Cowan said, I thought we started off pretty strong. We got on the penalty kill and they scored. And I felt like it kind of deflated us a bit. It's tough, but Berube's like, but you're supposed to be a professional now. You're supposed to be able to play through this. I know you're young, but I don't understand that thought process that you don't follow it up and be ready to go in the second period and make a push, and it's You've mentioned this before. It seems to be a problem of heart and follow through. So that's, a question that definitely has to be addressed.
That to me, um, you know, it seems very simple to suggest that if a team lacks heart or cohesiveness, lays at the feet of the players. But by virtue of the fact that it kind of spans the team, takes it away from individual issues, it becomes a group problem. And as a group problem, there's one guy you can point to when it comes to the group. There's one guy you can point to if the group is not performing whatever function it is that's everybody take the laundry list of things. Some fans don't think that there's players playing that should be playing, players aren't being brought in that should be brought in. People feel that even in the media they talk about, wow, nobody came to Matthews' aid. These are all things in my mind are coaching issues, are management problems, because it's one thing if you have a loose cannon. We've seen this in teams, right? Where you have a couple of guys, and look at what Vancouver and the Rangers went through, right? That was a situation where there were individuals within the locker room that were taking down the rest, right? I haven't heard yet if there's anybody in particular that's taking down the Leafs. So I won't go that route, but I can go the route of the coaches and management in general. And I'm getting really tired of when you blame players for something, it's a fair criticism. But in the context of the team, that's the coaches and management that are putting the wrong guys on the ice, or putting the wrong guys in the locker room, or putting the wrong guys in the pipeline. That essentially is why, while you can criticize, the players not having a guy like Cowan not thinking right, because that's what the coach is saying his head's not in the right space. Well, he's a rookie and you're the coach. Who should be able to teach him to put him in the right headspace? You don't do it out in public, you do it in private. But that, I think, what we're seeing, and this is I promise this long running rant is going to end somewhere. That's why I think the coach has to go. The coach has to go because he's not interested in coaching. He's only interested in criticizing. And when I'm saying that he's not interested in coaching, it's because he's deferring to complaining in the media. And I don't think that's right. You don't kick your guys under the bus when they're in a tough situation. I don't know if he's trying to save his job or lose it. Because for me, it's Aaron. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
I honestly think he hates every single player in that room with a fiery passion. He hates every single player there. There's no other way to look at it other than the fact that this is not a team that he wants to coach. It's not a team that's willing to listen to him. It's not a team that he thinks he can make do anything. They're second worst in the Eastern Conference at 29, 29, and 13. The only team that's worse than them are the tire fire of the New York Rangers. It's at this point here, it's truly puzzling how he was still a coach after November. Even more puzzling how they brought him back after the Olympics when they had the opportunity to get rid of him. There was a perfect 2-week break to do that. But it's just, it just feels bad.
Do the Leafs feel they can't afford to get a new coach? Is that the issue?
They've gone through too many coaches in the past few years. I don't think anybody really wants to coach here. I'll be honest with you.
Here's the thing, Aaron, and this is just an opinion. Just an opinion based on experience. The GM won't pull the trigger on the head coach. We saw this with, if you remember, Dubas, where he was being pushed to get rid of the coach. And he already got rid of one because he got rid of Babcock, right? And then what happens is with each failure of the survival of a coach, the finger moves from the players to the coach to the GM when it starts happening too often. So I think this is a Trey Living survival moment. He's just trying to keep his job. Because if he was responsible, he would have fired him in November. I saw a team that was not playing like they were coached. Like I said, those too many men on the ice penalties. That's that is basic. That's basic coaching. I mean, what is more basic than line changes, Aaron? It ain't the
The other
power
thing
play.
you've got to ask yourself is, do these players know how to count? Because that seems to me to be a bit bigger of a problem.
Yeah, well, Aaron, in my opinion, the reason I say that is because the players are playing distracted. I think the problem with the Leafs this year has been they've been poorly coached. The fact that Marner was gone, the fact that there were injuries. I also have this theory about injuries as well. Not all injuries will take players out of the lineup. You get what I'm saying? Not every injury will take a player out of the lineup. And many times nowadays, management doesn't want to appear to be bringing a player in before he's ready. So, are you ready to come in, right? Are you ready to play? Well, if you're a Maple Leaf this year, around October, November, and you're asked, are you ready to come in to play? First thing you're thinking is, maybe I need a little more time off. And I'm suspicious of that factor when it comes to the Maple Leafs. And then at this point, it becomes obvious that, players are going to be set aside because the team's not going anywhere. And in fact, they want the team to go nowhere at this point. This is now, we're at the point in the season where the Leafs are in a race to the bottom, right? And they don't have a very good head start because they were a little better than too many teams.
I think you also have to recognize here that there is a player who's hurt and there's a player who's injured. And the question usually comes down to, are you hurt or are you injured? Because you can play hurt. You can't play if you're injured. But if you get too many players playing hurt, eventually they're going to be injured. Yeah. And this is a distinction that the medical staff seems to have been strikingly unable to make. Matthew Nyes has been complaining of a consistent hurt, which has potentially turned into an injury. He should probably be shut down. OEL has been in and out of the lineup the past few games. Morgan Riley was held out for the most recent game. It's one of those things where you have to decide how badly you want to put a certain group of players on the ice and whether or not you can make do with other options. And that's really what they need to decide here.
Yes, and the less players they have on the ice with any kind of level of expectation of the fans, the better. The losing's a lot more palatable if it's guys that you don't really know and don't expect them to win.
True. Very true.
So I'm just saying, in case you want to avoid jerseys at center ice, don't feel guys like, that our buddy David and on Locked On Leafs, they're talking about turning Nylander into a 1C. In other words, the number one center. Boy, that seems to be the epitome. That says a lot in itself about this Leaf team. I know Matthews isn't in the lineup, but making Nylander the 1C, and there's admission that Tavares isn't up to the task, and whatever else they have there that can play center. It's a tough situation. Let's go over the rest of sports when it comes to Canadians, and let's start with the PWHL.
So this was a good news for the Ottawa Charge. This is the first time they beat Montreal this season. Rebecca Leslie scored in the takeover game past Anne-Renee Desbiens to lift the Charge to a 2-1 win. It was Leslie's 12th goal of the season, tied with Minnesota's Kelly Panik for the league lead. And for the Charge, it was their first win of the season against the Victoire. That moves Ottawa within 1 point of Toronto for the fourth and final playoff spot. And that overtime loss kept Montreal only 2 points back from Minnesota and Boston, who sit tied for first in the PWHL. So things are tightening up as we get towards the playoffs.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the University of Montreal.
So they've won the U Sports National Championship after entering the tournament as the lowest seed. They entered the national tournament in Elmira, ranked 8th. They upset the first, fourth, and second seed teams en route to the championship, beating the Concordia Stingers 5-2 in the championship game.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the University of Michigan staying in schools.
So big news for the Montreal Canadiens here. Michael Hagee and his Michigan Wolverines took on the Ohio State Buckeyes in the Big Ten Championship. Just like the Habs, the Wolverines came on top with a 7-3 win. Down 3-2 in the second frame, they went on to score 5 unanswered goals to win the game going away. Hagee had a quiet night with a single assist on a Will Horkoff goal in the second frame. TJ stole the show with a goal and a pair of assists in the win. This is good news for them because after his showing at the juniors, he's well primed to make the jump to the big show.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Jays.
So some good news. John Schneider gave us a promising injury update for Trey Yesavage for 2026. It was announced last week that Yesavage was going to begin the season on the injured list with a shoulder injury. This is a bit of a setback that we were hoping not to have. But apparently things are moving in the right direction. Last week it was mentioned that Yesavage had come to the camp with an injury. They're taking it slow. It's something that he reported to camp with, and it's obviously led to his slow buildup. He's feeling good. He's in a better place now to continue to ramp up, and he's going to continue on the program he's been on. They're going to be moving him up to Buffalo to start the season.
Any game he can't start is not a good thing for Toronto.
No.
Let's talk about extensions, Schneider and Aikens.
Yeah, just days before the start of the season here, the Blue Jays announced extensions for Schneider and Ross Atkins. Atkins was signed through 2031, and Schneider's been signed through 2028. When asked about it, Schneider said, "Hey, look, I've said that I bleed Jays blue now, and I'm definitely looking forward to keeping this thing going, especially after going to Game 7 of the World Series against LA." They're in a really good spot right now, and I think Schneider's one of the key architects of that.
And wouldn't you know, Guerrero, Kirk, Sanchez, they all have great games. Their last spring battle, 14-1, Aaron.
I tell you, Guerrero, Kirky, and Sanchez each had 2-run homers in a 6-run first inning. They just dog walked the Tampa Bay Rays 14-1. Springer's 3-run homer capped a 7-run fourth inning for Toronto. They ended the grapefruit season 12-14, not necessarily where they wanted to be, but Barger and Kirk each had an RBI single in that inning, and Sanchez knocked in a 2-run double. Leo Jimenez tacked on a run for the Jays with an RBI single in the 8th, but by then the damage was completely done. Dylan Cease got his first win, so that's a positive sign for the Jays as well.
Raptors?
Oh, they got burned pretty badly by the Phoenix Suns.
It was burned Suns. I get it.
It was a little bit lopsided there. That was a 120-98 loss. They're now 1-2 on a 5-game road trip. Didn't look like there was any fight to them. It just looked really flat.
Let's go to tennis.
So Mboko and Andreeva have advanced in the Miami Open women's doubles. Unfortunately, Leylah Fernandez got bounced on the single side of it. Mboko and Andreeva beat Ellen Perez and Demi Schuurs 7-6, 6-3 on Sunday in the round of 32. Leylah Fernandez lost to Jessica Pegula of the U.S. 6-2, 6-2 in the round of 32. So some are moving on, some are not. But grain of salt. Good start for them at the tournament.
F1 me.
So some important stuff to notice. F1 and its governing body, the FIA, said the Grand Prix races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia will not happen in April because of safety concerns related to the unsanctioned war in Iran. Both countries have been structuring Iran's response after the United States and Israel launched a wave of attacks at them. This announcement was made on Sunday in Shanghai ahead of the Chinese Grand Prix. Due to the ongoing situation in the Middle East region, the Bahrain and Saudi Arabian Grand Prix will not take place in April. There is, at this point, no plan to reschedule them because there's no indication as to when hostilities will cease in the region.
Not go elsewhere?
No, at this point here, it looks like they're going to chop it back to 22 races from 24. So
that's not a good thing for F1 fans like you.
Nope.
Give me some F1 Audi news.
So, those of you who aren't aware, Adrian Newey stepped down as the team principal for Aston Martin over the weekend as well, after a rather horrific start. He has demoted himself to chief aerodynamicist and technical engineer, which is a position he's held before. On the heels of him stepping down like that, there were rumors that Jonathan Wheatley from the newly formed Audi team would take over. This is just two races after they rebranded from Kick Sauber. Audi said Friday that Wheatley, who took charge of the Sauber team in 2025, was leaving with immediate effect for personal reasons. Matteo Binotto, a former Ferrari and Sauber team principal, has been elevated at this point. Now, the thought was that Wheatley would be going to Aston Martin to take over there after Newey stepped down, but there is rumor that there is potentially a 6 to 9 month gardening clause in his contract, meaning he wouldn't be able to participate with them until later in the season. So we'll have to see how that falls out.
Absolutely. FIFA me.
So FIFA has canceled 2,000 hotel room reservations in Philadelphia, according to the Greater Philadelphia Hotel Association. They had initially blocked off 10,000 rooms, but 4 city center hotels have been affected by this. Also of important note here, federal funding hasn't come through for any of the cities that are hosting these World Cup soccer matches. That's some of it, but FIFA are branding it as an opportunity for more fans to book rooms, because they've released 20% of the rooms that they were originally holding back into the marketplace.
Absolutely. There's could be a lot of conjecture as to why that kind of stuff is happening, but we'll leave it at that. Let's go to the National Hockey League Canadian teams, and let's start with the Habs.
So they absolutely stomped on the New York Islanders 7-3. Not the ending that they wanted. But after losing to the Senators on Thursday, the Islanders then turned around and got punished. Ilya Sorokin was unfortunately not enough for the Islanders. He allowed 6 goals on 32 shots. Dave Rittich came in for relief. But yeah, it's not been a good situation for them. They've really fallen off. Good news for Montreal, though, that puts them just a little bit closer to where they want to be. They are currently sitting in third with 86 points in the Atlantic Division, so they've got themselves comfortably into a playoff spot at this point.
Jets me.
Jets haven't been doing so well lately. Crosby and Raquel scored in the shootout to lead the Penguins to a 5-4 win over the Jets. Pittsburgh, who's also jockeying for a playoff position, got the extra points in the shootout for the second time this season. They have points in 7 of the last 8 games and 21 of their last 25.
Don't burn me, but flame me.
So the Panthers, AJ Greer got suspended 3 games. I don't know if you saw the clip.
Yes.
But he did smack Connor Zary from behind pretty hard. However, that's as maybe for one night. But the next night, they actually managed to get a win over the Lightning 4-3 in overtime. So, Ryan Strome scored 26 seconds into OT. Nikita Kucherov, Brandon Hagel, and Anthony Cirelli were kind of silent. That line had combined for 28 points in the previous 3 games. And Kucherov is now on top of the scoring list. So there you go.
I know we're a little short on oil in the world, but we've got Oilers news.
We do. Connor McDavid actually finds himself in a bit of a tricky spot now because he's behind Kucherov. He had 2 goals and 2 assists in the Tampa Bay Lightning's 5-2 victory over the Oilers on Saturday. He had his 39th and 40th goals and his 77th and 78th assist to push his season point total to 118. McDavid had his 38th goal to get to 116 points, so he's close. Oilers are going to have a chance to get some revenge at Utah on Tuesday, and the Lightning are going to be the Lightning were in Calgary on Sunday night.
The Knuckleheads,
first team to be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. 40 losses on the season.
It bodes well to the first overall pick.
This is true. This is true. They hit the 40 loss mark on the season after losing 3-1 to the Blues. Hronek scored the only goal. which came on a third period power play for them. Lankinen stopped 18 of the 20 shots he faced in the loss. Vancouver registered just 4 shots in the first period and were at 10 by the end of the second. But as for the 15, it wasn't the lowest shot total of the season, but ranks tied for second with 3 other games. They've been very much not good.
No, not really. They have not. Let's go back to the Leafs. Sure. And this is the game we can play. The Leafs aren't making the playoffs. But if you kind of just look a little bit to the west, you see they'd only be how many points out of a playoff spot, Aaron, if they were in the West Division?
If they were in the West Division, they'd be 4 points out of a wild card spot right now. Based on where they're sitting with their 71 points, they would be right behind the Nashville Predators and the Los Angeles Kings, tied with the Seattle Kraken for the wild card, and still ahead of San Jose, Winnipeg, St. Louis, Calgary, Chicago, and Vancouver. So division plays a lot into it. McDavid actually had a great quote about that too. He says, we haven't been as successful as we want to be, but the good news is our division is a bit of a pillow fight right now.
and this kind of frames things, right? Because we talked a little bit about the coach. Let's concentrate on the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Look, I've cut him a lot of slack. I've given him a lot of runway. I've given him a lot of opportunity. I haven't been critical of him because I didn't think it was fair because he just got here. But here's what I'm going to say. In the 3 years that he's been here, has the team gotten better?
They made it past the first round once. That's about all I got, man.
I just don't have faith in these two guys anymore. I just don't. Again, I have to keep going back to this because it is the proof. And the proof of it is that general managers and coaches can have a very big impact on a team and their success. The Buffalo Sabres are the example. I'm not suggesting that the Leafs can replicate or we have a right to believe that the Leafs could replicate what the Buffalo Sabres have done. It's not about replication. It's about possibilities, right? And the possibility is there that if you bring somebody else in, there's a good chance the team might improve. I know a lot of times, and many people would have thought of this with Buffalo earlier in the season, soon after changing general managers. There's a new vibe in town, and everybody's getting a fresh start. And then, within a month or so, or 3-4 weeks later, the team reverts to back who they were. Well, in the case of the Sabres, they only got better, and they kept getting better. At the end of the day, what was Yogi Berra saying? Baseball is a game where it's 90% physical,
and the other half is mental.
The other half is mental, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that's the issue here. I think we see a team here in the Toronto Maple Leafs that mentally are not up to the challenge. And what happened to Matthews, I think, was basically not a harbinger, but it gave rise to the belief that this team wasn't thinking like a team. And again, I go back to coaching and general managers. And the reason you can go to coaching is they have a direct communication with the players. You can go with a general manager because he can talk to the coach and say, who do you got in that room that's carrying the team? Who are the leaders in that team? Are they leading? Do you need a leader? And I think, and I said this isn't something I just started saying now. Austin Matthews is a really good player, but he is not a leader. And by leader, I mean somebody who goes out on the ice and straps the team on his back and brings them to winning, takes them to winning, right? This is not to suggest he lacks character or he lacks any leadership skills. It's just the Leafs do not have guys that I think McCabe was that guy for a short stretch there, if you remember, before the Olympics. He was smashing everything. He had so much pride. He was so disgusted with the way the team was playing. He himself tried to carry the team forward. Hard for a defenseman to do.
Very.
For me, Aaron, that's the issue, is the lack of leadership on the ice. I don't know what goes on in the locker room. It's probably the same thing in the locker room, but you and I don't have the privilege of being in the locker room before every game or after every game, so we can't talk about that. But what we can say is we don't see it on the ice. We don't see leadership on the ice. And that's the fault of the general manager and the coach, because between the two of them, they should figure out how to make that happen on that team.
100%. And, the Leafs have a bit of a soft part of the schedule coming up. Really no part of the schedule for these guys is soft, but they're playing Boston, who's in a wild card, Anaheim, who's first in their division. They got New York and St. Louis in between. And then, they're closing out the season, with San Jose, LA, Washington, the Islanders, the Panthers, the Stars, and the Sens. And of those teams, I think realistically, Anaheim, Dallas, Boston, those are like the only 3 playoff teams that they're facing. Everybody else is out of the wild card race or floundering just as badly as the Leafs are.
Well, they're the soft spot, because if what you want to do is finish as low as you can, they're the easiest ones to lose to.
Fair.
Right? The rest of them are trap games. In my definition, the rest of them are trap games, the ones where the Leafs don't want to win, and they want every chance to get the highest pick they can. And then next year, hopefully, with what they do this year, and they've learned some lessons. Aaron, I got to say, I'm not a Leaf fan. I'm a Toronto sports fan. I am that. But I lost faith in the Maple Leafs years and years ago. And they've teased a few times over the past half a century. They've teased a few times the impression that they could actually maybe make a run. And as it turns out, the last time they won the cup, they won with a bunch of old guys. The last time they came closest to win a cup, they brought a bunch of old guys in to play. Gilmore, Andrechuk, need I go on? That was a team laden with guys they brought in. McCowan, those were guys that they brought in with a lot of experience. And that was the closest the Leafs have come. They have not been able, in my time alive, and I've lived a long time, I have not seen this team be able to produce the kind of talent that's required to win a cup. They had the possibility with the core 4. It was there for them, but they did not draft to protect the core 4, to build around the core 4. And as I said many times before, they needed to trade one of them. I said it from the beginning, because they didn't have a real good defenseman, and they were a one-trick pony. If they couldn't score, they lost because they couldn't defend. In the playoffs, that was the case. The game got physical. They didn't have, none of the core 4 were guys that were going to win a battle for you in the corner. I mean, they might be able to poke a puck out of the corner, right? Like we see, the reaching that Nylander and Matthews do, right? They're not going to bull somebody off the puck. And that's what they're hoping Nyes is. That's why Montreal wants him. And that's why his value is so high. And I'm curious, Aaron, as a final question to you, do you see Nyes being a Maple Leaf next training camp?
You know what? Honestly, realistically, I don't think so. And that's generally a problem. This team has no real direction when it comes to this sort of thing. And look, I get it. Matthew Nyes is currently locked up at 7 3/4 all the way through until 2030. He's supposed to be a Leaf. He has no trade protection, so that means that it can move him if they need to. The question is, how much are they going to need to retain, or what else are they going to have to package with him to make it a little bit sweeter?
If they have to retain anything, don't trade him. They've got to find a sucker. I mean, a team that is willing to take the contract and pretend he doesn't have a hefty contract and give the Leafs a couple of big draft picks and a couple of players that could play on the team. But most of all, what I would want for Nyes, this is, if they don't trade Matthews. Whether they trade Matthews, Nyes, or Nylander, they've got to bring back a real good defenseman or a draft pick that'll get them a real good defenseman. What have we learned these past couple of seasons? The teams that have improved are the teams that have a balance, that have somebody that's a king on defense, somebody that's a king at forward, and a really good goaltender. 4 forwards that are really good doesn't cut it. So I hope the Leafs learn from that lesson, hopefully, that you need to have balance. And if they're going to start getting rid of assets, build balance this time. Build it. Build the 5 guys you want on the ice in overtime in the playoffs. You want the 5 guys. You want to have 5 guys that you can put them all on the ice, not 4 forwards, 2 real defensemen, and 3 forwards and a goaltender. That you will live and die with those 5 guys in that goaltender, those 6 players. That's what the Leafs have to do. They didn't do it when they had the chance. Now they're just going to have to try and hopefully learn from the previous mistakes.
They have $22.5 million tied up in 5 defensemen. One of them that they got from Boston doesn't seem to want to hit anything. Ekman Larsson seems to be injured a lot. Chris Tanev is on the long-term injured reserve. Jake McCabe kind of faded a little bit. And then they've got the boat anchor on left defense. That's $7.5 million a year tied up until 2030. This is a bit of a problem. And the fact that they all have modified no movement clauses, and no trade clauses means this is what you got. You either gut it out until the end of 27 with Brandon Carlo, and gut it out to the end of 2028 with Oliver Ekman-Larsson, or you find some way to move them out.
Aaron,
this isn't helping.
I agree with you, but let me hedge that agreement by saying this. If you bring in a better defenseman than what they've got, it makes the rest of them better. If you bring in a really good forward who has the tenacity, who doesn't know or want to know what it's like to lose, they could bring a guy like that has talent. At the end of the day, you can get guys with the attitude. You can get the guys who believe they can do it, who you believe, well, they'll make that contribution. You need those kinds of contributions from players who are central within the team. You can't add them, right? You can only add so much pepper on a steak. If the steak is tough, the steak is tough. You got to start with a better steak. And that's what the Leafs didn't do. So hopefully they will learn from that lesson. And I really believe they should start this season. They have their, as far as drafting is concerned, they got their organization together to draft. They don't need to have Trey Living to do it. His job right now is to organize that. The Leafs should have an organization for drafting. They can jettison him and the coach and really have a fresh start. And I really don't think the excuse that general managers have had going back to the president and Shanahan. Remember Shanahan sat in his hands for a year or two? Remember Trey Living sat in his hands for 2 years? No, you need guys that are going to come in that understand the game, that don't need, that are either paying attention. This excuse of, well, we weren't with the organization, so we didn't see what Matthews was like up close, or Marner up close, so we couldn't trade him. Anybody anywhere who followed hockey knew what the problem with the Leafs was. And that is they had guys that didn't have the bite that was necessary. And sadly, the only guy they could have got rid of was Marner, and they did not do it. And they lost that big ass asset. Well, they got a first round draft choice for him because, after all, the guy that they got turned into a first round draft pick.
Yeah.
But that's less than what Marner was worth.
Hopefully they learn a lesson from this. So,
okay, he's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. Thank you for watching. The bandwagon for the Toronto Maple Leafs is well parked. It's behind a lot of other vehicles. They've got it stowed in there real deep. Hopefully next year will be the beginning of maybe starting to have hope that at least this team is going in the right direction, because there's still room for them to get bad or worse. There's still room. We're hoping they do it now.
It's 11 games. Right? It's 12% of the season. We can still do it.
Good luck for Leaf fans. Hopefully they'll finish low enough that Bruins don't get their pick, and they pick something really good that helps generate some excitement in training camp, and maybe get a few more breaks and stay a little healthier and have a better year next year where Boston's pick is not that significant. That's what Leaf fans are hoping for. Have a great night, Aaron. Thanks for watching, everybody.